All right, so we're going to jump into the Nasdaq 100 and the SP 500. We had a lot of overall expectations going into this week. And when you talk about exactly where we're at right now, I'm going to actually get rid of some of these indicators to clear it up a little bit for everyone. But I want to show you where we are on a higher time frame here. If you look, we're coming right up to our supply level. I marked this out also on Twitter, so everyone can be notified as well. The link is down below. But you can see we're coming right into this key area. We're getting rejected. We got rejected basically when futures opened yesterday, and then we're finding ourselves there as market closes today. Now we have some things we need to talk about specifically with what's happening with the market and ultimately where we are going right now. Before we get into that, to ask you to consider doing two things: liking and subscribing, going over the market every single day, breaking down articles. Like yesterday, everyone's talking about a Fed pivot. That was fake news. We're going to talk about what's moving us, what's driving us, so you are prepared no matter what happens every single day. Let's get to it. So first thing we're talking about, really, for the most part, is going to actually be earnings. And I just want to come over here, bring this up, calendar, and show you where the earnings are right now. And this is what we're looking at ultimately. Tomorrow, yeah, we have some bigger ones coming out, but really after tomorrow's close is where we're going to see some of the bigger movers. We have Microsoft, Google, Meta, which is Facebook, obviously, Amazon, Apple, Intel. We have Shopify. Our really big names really kicking in Shopify as well tomorrow. I mean, Spotify tomorrow as well. So we have a lot of things coming up. Now, tonight, I don't think it's too big of earnings. You have Discovered, Logitech's interesting. Tomorrow, UPS, XLP stock with Coke. Nothing too important. But I think really we start to get the baseline of this earnings on Tuesday, basically through Thursday. Those are the big days I'd be worrying about. So going into this, why were we moving to the upside? What was, really to be expected here? Now, as we look here, let's just address where we're at. We're just going to bring the VWAP. We're going to bring, that's about it actually. I just want to address where we're moving, how we're trading here on the 15-minute. And then I actually want to go to Twitter real quick so I can show you what I was highlighting for everyone. I told everyone, SPY, massive level. This basically 377.5 all the way up to 380. We're going to cover that here in a second as well. I was going over everything in between so you could see everything. But the big thing I talked about this morning, and I posted it on Twitter as well, was the DXY. You were bear flagging, if you will, kind of breaking down, holding that bottom line of the trend, where we are now. And if you don't know, basically, this is just food for thought, things to consider, do your own DD on it. But basically, when the dollar has been dropping, we talked about in the past few days what has been dropping the dollar, what's been hurting the dollar. We've seen indexes bounce, right? So I posted some on Twitter so you can see that as well. But when we go to the dollar, we can see, obviously, we've been breaking down, holding this lower level support, and we're just sitting there now. My opinion, it looks like we're going to break. It's just really weak as we are going right now. And based on what's happening with Japan and China selling off our value and all our currency. So we go back over here really quick to NQ. I just want to talk about where we're at and treading carefully. Now, earlier in Discord, there was a lot of good plays. I was mentioning them. We were heavily talking about those in Discord and going over scalps, and you had your opportunity to the upside. And basically, until you got back to 11.5, I was kind of a bull. I was just like, you have to stay relevant towards the upside. It makes the most logical sense here based on how you're trading. We've seen the wicks back down and then buyer stepping in right when we came back to that 11.25, 11.2 area, which we were ultimately trading in all last week if you get back into it. A bulk of that volume, if you remember, was right here. We had after hours trading pushing us above, but basically during market hours, what happened is we were just pinballing in this range, back and forth, back and forth. Every time you pushed above was locally and basically pre-market or after hours, or you would open up and then eventually push right back into this area. So that's really what we were looking at here, right? And I want to highlight that. So you come back into this area, you bounce, and you're coming back into the next supply. So overall, you do look bullish on a shorter term chart. When we're talking about the 1 hour, 15-minute, past week or so, you do look decent. Why? Let's be a little clear here. You are making higher lows here, right? Making higher lows, higher highs as well, trying to push up. Now this is lower high as we speak right now, going into market close, but I just want to highlight where you're at. So again, as I've been telling people, tread carefully into these earnings, okay? Tread very carefully. I'm going to keep everyone updated if you're on Twitter, even if you're not in Discord. I like to post a lot of free information as well, but I want people to really know, what's going on here, right? Specifically about this range going into basically 11.7. This is a lot of resistance in this range. I want to highlight that. This is going to be a pain. This, yes, is my first level of supply, but you have more here and more here. This is going to be very hard to get above. So automatically when you're in this range, I am preparing myself to start positioning heavier for the downside just based on how I assume earnings are going to go. But you need to understand that earnings could go either way. And I still favor the downside from earnings, basically from everything except Microsoft. I'm very bearish on, specifically on this week. Google may have good earnings, but besides that, again, very bearish on consumers overall. Now, we're going to go over to ES and look at what's happening with S&P futures. Now, I want to highlight here, S&P futures look a little bit stronger, in my opinion, to locally what's happening with Nasdaq. Okay, I'm going to highlight that. Now, you're in supply as well here. Again, these are just areas I'm looking at. I'm highlighting, don't kill the messenger. You're pushing up, and we had to look for this upside. Just, you had to, into the day. Again, came down. You did not come nearly as far down as you did with Nasdaq. You came down, previous highs here, and then bounced right back up to that supply. Again, looks decent, looks good, etc. Now, I'm going to go over some stocks here near the end of the video that I like and setups that have potential to, so everyone knows and has plays that they can be looking for on a watch list for tomorrow. But again, very careful is all I can say here. Be very careful. I want to see a little bit of downside here. I want to see a little bit of downside to around 37.55. Hopefully we can hold this area. And then I would look to trade back towards the upside tomorrow. Now, again, I'm not looking to long in this area up here. I do not want to go long while you're in this critical area that we've been talking about, okay? I think if you come down deeper, maybe 37, if you're holding this range down here, you're looking for more potential upside into these earnings specifically. Now, again, I don't think you have an extensive amount of time to focus on these long plays because I believe Microsoft is going to be your bullish, and honestly Google as well. So these are going to be probably your best day here. Microsoft, Google, you have Spotify, Chipotle, these are all probably going to do well on the after hours tomorrow. These going forward, not looking promising. Meta, I don't think Meta's going to do well. Shopify, I don't think they're going to do well. They could. They had some good news today. I just don't think they're going to do well. Apple, don't think so. They're scaling back on production of iPhones. Amazon, we've already seen what Jeff Bezos said about the recession. Intel, semiconductors in general are just getting slapped, right? Pinterest, the list goes on. So those I don't like to see. These I think do bad. But I think we have upside potential into Tuesday. So as the market's closing here and I see a dip here, honestly, this is kind of what you want to see. Because if we're looking at day trade, we're looking just to ride the momentum on the day, etc. So I want to see downside earlier in the morning, 8:30 basically through 10, first hour and 30 minutes of trading, and then setting it back up for upside. Very similar to the behavior we saw today. If we come in here, I'm going to use the opens indicator so you can see. But I really want to just talk about here on SPY of really what happened this morning. We saw a gap up, came down, and then you got back above the weekly and you never looked back. Again, if you're using the 90 MA, you rode that 90 MA essentially for almost 2 hours here, got below, rode it again for another 2 hours into close, almost here, and you're seeing a little bit of a dip into the after hours. So as I'm looking here, I'm telling people be careful, very careful when it comes to these options, coming to this market. Just take a step back. What I'm looking for personally for right now for myself, and this is not going to be an extremely long video, I am looking for one, to step up my maybe 2 month out positions for downside. I want to start establishing those as I've been talking about, right? Going into Microsoft earnings. And then two, tomorrow as a day trade, I'm looking for upside potential into those Microsoft earnings. Because again, I do believe that's going to be relatively strong. Now, things you need to be looking at, just keeping on the board. Okay, a few things. We talked about what's happening with JPY, the Chinese yuan, everything like that. We still expect downside, in my opinion, on the dollar. If dollar breaks below a 111.8, I think you see downside probably to 110, personal opinion. As long as you hold this area, you have to be a little cautious, specifically towards the upside pressure going into tomorrow. So if you end up holding this level, I would scrap all upside potential. I would just sit on your hands. You can't really do much. If you start to bounce really hard, you have to expect a dip on the market. So I want to make that really clear. So you want to see a dip below this 11.8 on DXY to further prove the thesis of what's really driving this market right now. Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's my focus there. Again, last thing as far as fundamentals, the boring stuff, I do want to say, keep an eye on yields. They're still mounting and holding 4%, and they're going higher and higher, which it continues to look terrible for the overall economy and tells me that the downside most likely is not done and that people should be very concerned. Again, if you want more detailed videos, the video I did yesterday and the video I did on Friday were really in detail on the market, but I don't want to spend too much time there and repeat myself. Now, We're gonna talk about some of the stocks I'm liking. Microsoft. Now, honestly, Microsoft, what a play, man. Honestly, we missed out on this one. So Microsoft going into this, I want to highlight my overall level, and I'm gonna do it really quickly so you can all see. So 242 basically through 241.5 has been a major level. Every time you come down, you've been bouncing. And basically you came down, you bounced, and you just took off. You made new highs, continue to bounce, and hold every single major level as well. So Microsoft looks really tough. I do believe Microsoft is coming to an end as far as how much potential room you have before earnings. I would be highlighting the local high that you have right now, around 250. What I'd be looking for Microsoft specifically as a day trade is if you get a break back down to 244, I'd be watching that level. After that, I'd be watching the 242 level. That's where I'd be watching for a bounce to get back up. Not 250, but just as a day trade back to these key levels. I like how Microsoft's moving. Again, people are anticipating them to beat as well. Next up is going to be Apple. I love how these guys are moving. We came to my target. I mentioned them in Discord earlier. I was so focused on Microsoft, I couldn't get the entry, so I didn't end up getting into Apple. Now, you look at Apple, what's happening? You came down, you mounted back on the weekly, and you've been holding the 90 MA all day long, coming back to 150, that level right there. I want to highlight where you're overall looking at. This is your same level about up here. That's your local high. I don't think you're going to break that before earnings unless Microsoft goes crazy. But I do like Apple as a safer play as well. Again, I'm not looking to hold any of these plays through their earnings, but they're going to protect you with the IV so you don't get killed. So I like the weekly contracts on these to the upside. So for specifically on the contracts, Microsoft, I like the 250s. Apple, I like the 150s. Those are the ones I continue to look at, but you want to see a dip before you do anything here. You don't want to be buying at the top. You want to be buying when it comes back down for a dip. That's what you're looking at specifically on these. Now, Tesla has made a really interesting move on the day. You came down to made new 52-week lows, came down 198-ish, came back above. But the interesting factor here is the volume that stepped in. Because at first, Tesla was weak. It was very weak. Weakest stock in the market. You came down here, and then volume picked up. Buyers shot you right back up and filled this overall daily gap that you had going on here. So we like to see that, and I think Tesla is strong. I would be on the watch and be watching Tesla specifically to break back down. I don't think it's the strongest stock. I think you had a little bit of people just flowing in and just cued the buy signal when it came to 200. But be careful here specifically on Tesla. If you start to get some upside, what I'd be looking for here is a break above the 215 level. If it breaks above 215, I think you could easily come back to 219, 220. That's a day trade opportunity. So what you're looking for there. Until then, I think you have to have caution. I think you have to be careful here on Tesla, just with everything going on. Not going to mention Amazon. Don't even like it. Not even a fan. NVIDIA and AMD have probably been some of the best technical plays on the market. I'm going to show you both these, the last thing we're going to go over, and you can get out of here. As you look at NVIDIA, 126, 125, 124.5 is a big level here. If you get back below 124.5, 124, I'm looking for a retest and a push back down to monthly 123.5, possibly breaking down even deeper, down to 121 once again. That's what I'd be looking for there. AMD, looking here. AMD, basically, we have a going little joke in Discord as well. AMD's been the ultimate signal of the market because every time you come to 59, you get rejected and the market gets rejected as well. AMD is currently making higher lows. Okay, I want to highlight the higher lows coming in here. You start to break down as well below VWAP around 58 to 58.5. I'd be looking for a downside back towards 56.8 to 57, and that's it for me. Now I'm going to go over the option flow here just to show you as well. It still looks strong. SPY looks good. Way better than what we have seen here on the channel. Qs looks decent. This is your first big order of the day to come in for January, but I want to highlight it still looks decent. Doesn't look as terrible as it has been in the past. Going into VIX, big indicators here. Finally had a decent dip of a day here, but you want to see VIX really start to drop to confirm the upside pressure and the upside move.